My daughter-in-law sold my jewelry, not knowing it was evidence. I used to believe that the quietest mornings were the safest. The house would still be half asleep, sunlight slipping through the kitchen curtains like it was afraid to wake anyone. I would sit at the table with my tea, listening to the ticking of the clock and the distant hum of traffic, reminding myself that I had survived another day. At 67, survival had become my measure of success. That morning began like all the others, the house that was no longer mine. I had lived in that house for 32 years. I raised my son Daniel there. I buried my husband from that house. Every creaking floorboard held a memory. Yet, somehow, after Daniel married Melissa, it stopped feeling like mine. Melissa had moved in with the confidence of someone who believed she belonged everywhere she stood. She rearranged furniture within weeks. Curtains disappeared. Family photos were replaced with minimalist art prints she ordered online. "This looks cleaner," she'd say. "This feels more modern." Daniel would smile weakly and agree. The jewelry box had belonged to my mother. Inside were pieces collected across generations. Nothing flashy, nothing trendy. Except one, an emerald ring. I never wore it, not once, because it wasn't jewelry. It was evidence. 40 years earlier. In 1983, I was 27 years old and deeply, foolishly in love. His name was Thomas Whitaker. He was charming, ambitious, well-connected. He talked about real estate like it was destiny. He promised me a life filled with travel and comfort. One rainy night, he borrowed my car. He didn't come back until dawn. 2 days later, the news reported a hit and run. A young woman killed. No suspects. A week after that, Thomas gave me the ring. An engagement gift, he said, smiling. But when I held it under the light, I noticed something strange inside the band. A micro engraving, a date, initials. The same date as the accident, the same initials as the victim. When I confronted him, the man I loved vanished. In his place stood someone cold, calculating. "You didn't see anything," he said, "and if you're smart, you'll forget." I kept the ring. I kept my silence. And I waited. Back to the present. The morning the jewelry box vanished, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat very still. Because panic is loud, and silence listens. When I finally asked Melissa about it that evening, she didn't even pretend to care. "I sold it," she said. "Relax, it wasn't worth much." Daniel looked shocked. "You sold Mom's jewelry?" "We needed the money," she snapped, "and she doesn't even wear that stuff." I remember thinking then how strange it was, how confidently cruel someone could be. "How much did you get?" I asked quietly. She shrugged. "A few thousand. Honestly, I thought it would be more." A few $1,000 for decades of history, for proof someone had died. The piece she missed. Melissa thought she'd taken everything. She hadn't. Years ago, after my husband died, I stopped trusting anything that could be moved easily. I had hidden the emerald ring inside a false panel beneath the stairs. Melissa sold memories. I still had truth. But the danger was real now. Once items like that circulate, questions follow. And questions attract people who don't want answers. The auction listing. 2 weeks later, curiosity, or dread, led me to search online. There it was. Vintage emerald ring, estate jewelry. The photos were clear enough for me to recognize the tiny flaw in the stone. My hands went numb. That ring wasn't supposed to resurface like that. I made a phone call I hadn't made in 20 years. "Richard," I said when he answered. "It's Evelyn." A long pause. "I was wondering when you'd stop hiding," he said, till the truth could no longer be buried. The courtroom. Testifying felt like stepping back into my own shadow, but this time I didn't look away. The engraving was magnified for the jury. The documents were unsealed, the lies unraveled. Thomas Whitaker was convicted. Melissa's family, who had been quietly connected through business, cut her off within weeks. Daniel cried when the verdict was read. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I know," I said. "That's why this hurts." Aftermath. Melissa left. No apology, no goodbye, just silence. The house feels different now, lighter, honest. The jewelry box sits empty on my dresser. I don't need it anymore. Some truths don't belong in boxes. They belong in the final words. I was quiet for decades, not because I was weak, but because I was waiting. And sometimes the smallest things, an old ring, a careless betrayal, a greedy mistake, are all it takes to bring the truth home.